So I do cutouts, y'all know that. And that there is from, I don't know, maybe a dozen 5-gallon pails of wax, like some comb, wax comb. So it takes a lot to get down to a little bit. So after I clean it, basically what I do is I melt the wax in some water, let it cool, the junk goes to the bottom, the nice wax goes to the top. You can see the outside of it looks kind of nasty, but the inside is nice. When you get big chunks of wax like that, I find the best thing to use is a Beekeeper. Give it a good whack and it snaps right in half.
So any bee carcasses or anything like that float to the bottom?
Float to the bottom. They go right there. See, that one is upside down. So this junk right there is probably what they call is the slum gum. The main thing with rendering wax is you do not want to heat wax directly. And so commercial wax melters have a jacketed vat. So your hot water is surrounding the vat, and it's just wax. So the honey can settle out, so you can actually extract what they call as cooking honey, because it's overheated and it's discolored. Let's see. So this is nicer wax. You can see how it's white, and that comes from. So this is a brand new comb here. Look at that. Here we go. So that's a brand new comb, and it's white, and that's what it comes out as. It actually comes out clear, and then after the bees chew on it, it gets opaque. So after a while, it all turns yellow, and so that you can see that it's a little darker. And then these three pieces here, you can see this is kind of like a green tinge to it. That one's got a kind of brownish green. That one's kind of getting darker. Those are because I burnt the wax, which is very easy to do. Here's some more. Yeah. And I got this other piece here too. This is really interesting. Pass that around. That piece there, that's probably 10 years old. You can feel the weight difference in it. And the weight, there's less wax in the old piece than there is in the new piece, because that is mostly the silk. So this is a good source for wax. You drop the frames and drop and you can't put them back together. Humpty Dumpty fell off, and that's it. This is cappings. This is after the wax cappings from.
And those are honeybees right there.
There's one right there.
Right.
There's a honeybee. This is later in the fall after the bee. Most of the bees. These guys all come out in the cold. Here's some old wax. You can tell this was a cutout that did not work. You got small hive beetles there. This is new wax. And this is my wax rendering setup here. And what I do is I'll put in 3-4 inches of water in there, and put in all that old honeycomb. Let it simmer, or not simmer. You do not want to get it to a boil. I've had this. If it gets to a boil, it actually boils over. It's like, I don't know if anybody's put a pot of sauce on the stove, and it doesn't really bubble through. It just kind of lifts everything up, and just goes. The same thing happens there. And if you go look at my driveway now, you can see where the wax is run down pretty good. All right, so for bees to make wax, you gotta have specific conditions. The bees themselves are 12 to 21 days old, so they get 9 days of their life to make wax. The temperature in the hive must be 91 to 97. There must be a nectar flow because it takes. There must be more bees being born than dying. That's why you don't really see it in the fall, because sometimes we get a nice nectar flow in the fall, but we don't see wax being made, or if it is, it's very little. Because there's more bees, the population is decreasing. And also, the bees must not have any room. So if you want to make good comb honey, you gotta make sure all the comb in there is packed full, and then just put a nice empty frame up top. That would be the wax scales. That's where the out of the glands, wax glands, squeezed out. It's squeezed out in a liquid form, which is interesting because the wax is liquid at this 91 to 97 degrees, yet it doesn't melt until, once it's out of the body of the bee, it doesn't melt until it's 147 degrees.
It takes hours, doesn't it, to make those flakes?
It'll take about 12 hours.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
imagine that. You know,
So-
imagine how much work they gotta put in.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
So here we've got a match head. We've got some pollen grains. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's more pollen. Who knows? There's a bee wing. There's a mite, and then there's the wax scales. And you can see how they're translucent right there. So I did a little math. It's like you were asking. 12 hours to make a set of scales. For 9 days, it's 81 scales in their lifetime. And it takes 15,400 to build a honeycomb about the size of your hand, which works out to be about the equivalent of a square comb honey. So you've got 190 bees. 190 bees' lives it takes to make one square comb honey for the wax. I didn't figure out the honey. Important things to remember when rendering wax. Here we go. Never heated directly. Never ever heated directly. It's always, even the commercial vats are water jacketed. You saw my setup there. It always has water in the bottom. If it doesn't have water, the water prevents it from getting over 212 degrees, which 212 degrees will burn the wax, but it will not set it on fire. So, yeah, so at 120 to 130 degrees, it's soft. You can work it. When I get the candles out, when I'm making candles, as they cool off, you can reshape them at about that temperature. If it gets lower than that, it gets brittle. Another thing I don't think I put on here was that the more you heat it, the more brittle it gets. So each time you heat the wax and cool it, it gets brittler and brittler. Wax will get this color at 185. When you're making candles, you really only want it to be about 160 to 164 degrees. It also shrinks a lot too. When you heat wax up, it expands a lot more than water would or much anything else. So when you're making candles and you're pouring them in the molds, you want to be right on top of it, because each degree it'll drop a little bit. You just want to keep pouring into the top to keep it going. Yeah, water boils at 212, so you won't overheat the wax. It actually goes into the flash point, which is when it turns into a gas, and it can be the gas can ignite. It's 400 degrees. So if you run out of water and you leave that flame on, that vapor is going to go under, and you're going to have a nice good time. Yeah, always heat directly in the water to not let the water boil. So as I said, it waxes 147, and I keep it below 185. And as it melts, I just keep adding more pieces in, because usually the honeycomb, I don't know where they went, but they're chunks, and there's a lot of airspace in them. So you fill a pan up real quick. And as I said, that one piece in the first picture that was about that thick was 10, 12 5-gallon pails of wax. And it'll all fit into that one pan as it melts. There it is again. Right. Another option, well, here's a solar oven, is a regular oven. You can put, if you got an oven, a lot of them you can set at about 175 or 180 degrees is the lowest, which is perfect for melting wax. So if you pull all the racks out, you set a nice pan in the bottom, just catch the overflow, because if you don't, it will overflow somehow. This is not mine. This is one I found. I actually built one similar to this, and I got rid of it just because it's so slow. I get so much wax I can't use it. This one obviously has chunks of wax in there, which means it was already rendered through a system like I do, through a pan of hot water. And then, I think I explained, once you melt all the wax, what I do is I put a piece of styrofoam insulation on the top to keep the heat in there. Because if it cools too fast, what it does is it cracks and pulls to the sides and it gets stuck. But But if it cools real slow, it will actually condense into a disc and pull away from the sides of the pan. You can pull it right out. So the slower you can cool the wax, the better. This here, when you use one of these, it's very easy to make. All you need is a box and a piece of glass. This person actually painted it black inside and helped absorb the heat. It doesn't get much over 180, 190 degrees, which is great for melting wax. It goes real slow. And as you can see, there's kind of like wire mesh there. And probably under there, maybe here, there's like a shelf. Maybe they've got, or maybe the whole thing is, you got a piece of paper towel under there. So you catch the big stuff, and then it goes through. You can run the hot wax through a paper towel if you go slow enough. You try to go fast, it's just like, yeah, I had trouble with mine. I wanted to do it faster, so I had to be out there and kind of like look at the sun and move it and tilt the angle and everything else to get it hotter. They can get it move faster, and it was a lot of work. I actually made another one that I cooked a hamburger on. It worked great. I used one of those 18-inch satellite dishes you see on everybody's house these days. Put a piece of tin foil over it, and right in the focal point, cook the hamburger. It's amazing the power of the sun. Easy melter can be used use a deep hive body and a piece of glass. That's all you need. Stuff you got on hand. I recommend against getting new pieces of glass, like these newer windows they put in, all these replacement windows that are vinyl and double glazed. They usually have a gas in there, or it's tinted in such a way that it reflects the sun and doesn't let the heat in. So those don't work. You just need a single piece of glass out of an old picture frame. Usually you see them on the side of the road when people are remodeling. You just stop and pick up an old window. I actually saw somebody in winter, they had a 5-gallon bucket set up with a piece of glass, and inside the bucket was a rack with a little block of beeswax on it and some paper towels and a bucket underneath to catch the drippings and a heat lamp. So you use the heat lamp to heat the bucket to melt the wax, and it worked awesome. The stuff came out beautiful. And then if you do use paper towels, you can use that as a fire starter later on. Yeah, and then you search for plans. They come up so easily, but it's just so simple. It's a box that you can. Most of them have legs on them that you can tilt up and down to position it into the sun. Basically, it's something that holds the stuff up so the wax can run down into a pan. This was a great video I found. Said I can't connect to the internet with that computer, so I couldn't play it. But there's, if anybody wants to take a picture of that, and there's a video of me cooking a hamburger. So. And I was completely sober in the picture. If you check it out. Usually, candles happens. So this white fuzz here on it is called wax bloom. And it's no big deal. It's kind of like your chocolate bar when you leave it in the counter too long and you find it. They do? I'm more familiar with my chocolates than I am my fruits. So I made these. This was in a tin. With the attached ones here with the wicks on the other side. It was made in a tin mold. And if you look at the bottom, you can see where it has shrunk, and I had to refill the holes. And I didn't do it soon enough so you can see the separation.
Which do you like better, the tin or the silicone?
Silicone, actually. I was surprised myself. Usually I like stuff that worked in the past. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's me too.
Silicone makes sense
The
because
silicone works great.
it's gonna get up to 500 degrees.
Well, if your wax is 500 degrees, you don't
Then
have any
it
silicone.
wouldn't be.
Or yourself.
That's what oh yeah, you don't have to worry about making candles. So here's some dipped candles, and I dip these a lot. And you can see there's ridges on there. And what I come to find out was that my room temperature was too cold. It was hardening too quickly. So as I was pulling it out, it was hardening and hardening and hardening. It pulled down and it would shrink, and with each layer, that the ridges would get deeper.
How many dips did it take to do that?
Yeah. How many dips does it take to get to the center of the Tootsie Pop? Yeah, something like that. Oh, 40, 50? But if it's done, if it's done at the right temperature, what happens is you get a good thick coating of wax. So if it's too hot, you dip the candles in, it melts the wax that you already put on there. So you really don't want to do
8
that.
hours to make 2 candles. I don't know.
Right. So if you got it at, if it melts at 147, you got the wax at about 160. It's right at that point. So when you dip it and you pull it out quick, the coolness of the candle makes the wax in the vat cool off around the candle. They pull it out. Whereas if it's say 200 degrees, you're gonna dip your candle in there. It's gonna melt the candle. So it's really got to be a good,
Just back
the
them
right
up, just
temperature.
keep pulling up a bare rope though.
Yeah.
8 hours later.
So next, we can make soaps, lotions, and other stuff. I think we had some examples of that last time. Coating cheese, and I think this is where the idea of the wax wraps comes in. Is you put wax into cloth. I got one over there, and to keep things fresh. I do this with my cheese all the time. No, not this. I use these other things over here. These will come up in a second. I do this all the time. I keep a chunk in my toolbox. Use the wax. I don't know what that is. That's like a maybe mixed. A lot of times you can take mineral oil, mix it say 1 to 1, and it'll give you a nice soft wax that you can work with. Crayons, I've never done that. I don't know what you use for pigments. You probably can't like you use crayons. Or they do sell a oil-based colorant for foods. I guess that could be the same thing. You can't use the liquid food colorings. I know that it won't mix. They do make special wax colorants. They probably sell them in all the catalogs. Boots, I've done that too.
How did it work? That was something
I don't have anything compared to, but it works fine for me.
He's chasing around.
It works, so I don't know how to commercial stuff.
I mean, as far as like, my boots, I don't put anything on it.
Oh yeah. Oh, can't drop that. There you go. Yeah, so I've done it with wax, and it keeps the water out and everything. Looks pretty good. Again, you gotta
warm the wax a little bit, so it's dry
again, you mix it with another oil.
Oh, okay. So
Mineral oil is usually the common thing for something like that. You can use any oil though. If you use something like olive oil, it's gonna ferment or whatever, spoil. I'll do this. A warm pan and just a chunk of beeswax like that, and wipe it right down. It works awesome. I season my cast iron pans with it. Usually, you're not supposed to put liquid. All I use is cast iron. You're not supposed to put liquid into a cast iron. And I'll make a chili or something in there, and it'll just the seasonings will come right out of it. So when I'm done, I wipe it out and clean it, and put a little beeswax in there, and I'm good to go for the second round.
Do you have to start your seasoning up and reheat it, and then you just go with the beeswax?
Just leave it. I'll just heat it up real hot on the stove until it starts to smoke. So these here,
Put the pot in the oven, just heat it up till it smokes.
so I'm the only one that cooks in the house. So
Oh.
that's it. So this stuff here, this is the beeswax wraps, and it's beeswax mixed with a little bit of oil, and it actually sticks to itself. It's sticky. You can wrap stuff with it.
how do you make it?
Instead of plastic wrap.
Right. So instead of plastic wrap,
Oils.
I made these. Yeah. So I mean, you wrap something like that, like a little package. You fold it over, and it just stays right where it is. resin, pine resin and oil.
What kind of oil did you use?
Jojoba. So, anything else? Any other ideas or questions or anything stuff like that?
Well, check that. We brought the soapbox and talked a little bit about making soap with honey.
You know, soapbox.
Soap. It's a little short for a soapbox.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.